The other surprise on SmackDown was the return of Lars Sullivan. He's the Freak. You know how I know this? Because Michael Cole wouldn't shut up. Corey Graves wouldn't shut up every 2 seconds. The Freak, the Freak, Le Freak, Shashik. That should be his theme song. They want you to know that this man is a freak. And he has not been on television since June of last year when he hurt his knee in a match on Raw against the Lucha House Party. And here it was right back to him just showing up and just randomly destroying dudes, just like he was doing the last time we saw him. This time it was Jeff Hardy and Matt Riddle and The Miz. John Morrison backed off. And Lars is part of the eligible pool of talent to be drafted tomorrow night, so they're going to give it a go with old Lars again. I think Raw is the better place for him. I actually think he would fit right in if they're going to keep that Raw Underground shit around, which it sounds like they are. He probably would be a good fit on Raw Underground, killing dudes on there. But I think Raw would probably be a better place for him than SmackDown. So here's how all of the other moves played out. We're going to get into all of this here, including all the people who have yet to be drafted and where I think they should end up and where I think they will end up. But here's how all the other moves played out on Friday. The main champions, they're not going anywhere. Roman Reigns stays on SmackDown. Drew McIntyre stays on Raw. Asuka, the Raw Women's Champion, remains on Monday Night Raw, as do all 4 members of the Hurt Business who have been probably the best part of Monday Night Raw for months now. AJ Styles, he's coming back to Monday Night Raw. He returns to the Red brand, which I predicted last week. I mean, there didn't seem to be any obvious program left for him on SmackDown after the ladder match with Jeff Hardy and Sami Zayn. I'm sure he doesn't mind being away from Paul Heyman. He claims it's not a big deal. He's a professional, but I don't think he's going to cry over being drafted to another brand. Now we just need Heyman to recruit somebody on Raw, like Ricochet, just to fuck with AJ. Heyman could be on both shows. Actually, if Brock ever comes back, he's probably going to be on Raw. So you're going to end up getting Heyman on Raw and Heyman on SmackDown anyway. But I just hope Joseph Park comes with AJ Styles. I hope Joseph Park is part of the package. It would be a sin if we don't get more Joseph Park on TV at some point. And maybe even an Abyss cameo. I thought they would do an Abyss cameo in the Royal Rumble. When did he come into the company? Was it this year? I think it might have been the beginning of this year. Was it this year or last year? I think it was this year. And I thought, okay, I didn't expect Abyss to be wrestling full-time for WWE, but I thought maybe they'd give him a spot in the Rumble match, let him come out in the full like Abyss mask and the whole getup. Be like a nice moment. We've had people come over from TNA who were very clearly recognized by the WWE audience. AJ Styles, right? Case in point. So I think he would have gotten a nice little pop for himself, but we never got that. I still think it would be just a nice thing to do. It'd be cool to see him get his moment, and maybe they could even work a spot into the Royal Rumble match with him and AJ. Maybe he dumps AJ out of the ring. I still think there is the potential to kind of just get him a quick cameo at some point. Now, not the other kind of cameo, because then Vince McMahon would want to take that over. Naomi goes to Raw. MVP was already on Twitter, teasing that the Hurt Business may have an interest. They may have a spot open for their first female member. I'm not so sure that wouldn't be a bad idea. Ditch the glow. I know the glow, that's her whole gimmick. Feel the glow. What the fuck does that even mean? I would consider the offer if I were Naomi. Naomi is part of the Hurt Business. That's kind of intriguing. Shayna Baszler and Nia Jax, the women's tag team champions, they remain on Raw. They'll still be able to float from brand to brand as long as they hold on to those titles. Rick O'Shea, he is staying on Raw. Angel Garza, staying on Raw. I mentioned Kofi and Xavier Woods. They're coming to Monday nights, as are Miz and Morrison. Mandy Rose and Dana Brooke. I have absolutely no idea why they traded for Dana Brooke if they were just going to waste a draft pick on this woman 3 weeks later. I say waste, I'm not trying to insult her. I'm just saying, if you are we don't have GMs anymore, but if you're the one who's in the war room for this draft, you basically wasted a pick on somebody who you just went and I guess traded for 2-3 weeks ago. It's so dumb. At least the Mandy Rose thing you can explain. by saying Miz wanted to get back at Otis and that's why that happened. The Dana thing, though, is just stupid. That is just dumb. Now, SmackDown. SmackDown gets to keep the Tribal Chief, but picks up the other remaining member of the Shield, Seth Rollins, who can no longer sell his Monday Night Messiah shirt. Now he's going by the name of the SmackDown Savior. I believe this is the first time that Rollins, in all these years, all of the drafts that they've had, has ever been drafted as a SmackDown star. He has been a consistent presence on Monday Night Raw since the Shield first debuted in 2012. And that's not to say he hasn't had any matches on SmackDown over the years. He's had some matches, but this is the first time officially, I believe, that he is part of the Blue brand, which is kind of hard to believe because he's been around for 8 years. And I thought, when I saw that he was drafted SmackDown, I thought, well, at least he's away from the Mysterio family, right? That feud's been going on since, what? How long has that feud been going on for? June? Probably, right? Probably May or June, somewhere around there. But then Rey Mysterio and Dominic Mysterio got drafted to SmackDown as well. So they get to continue their feud on Friday nights. No Aaliyah, though. No mention of Aaliyah. Aaliyah Mysterio. Can Aaliyah be drafted? I mean, she's been on TV now for weeks. No mention of Aaliyah. Sasha Banks stays on SmackDown. Bianca Belair joins her from Monday Night Raw. And that is going to be a sick match one day. Sasha Banks against Bianca Belair. That is a SmackDown Women's Championship main event. Probably not even that far down the road. I could see that just a matter of months. We could be seeing these two women locking it up for the SmackDown Women's title. And I think that would be a hell of a match. Jey Uso stays on SmackDown, as does Otis and Big E. There were several names that went undrafted on Friday night, but they were drafted in the 5th round. They had round 5 on Talking Smack, which went up on the WWE Network the next morning. Humberto Carrillo. I'm sure everybody was waiting with bated breath. Where is Humberto going to land? Well, Humberto landed exactly where he has been. He's landed on Main Event. Technically, he was drafted by Monday Night Raw, but we all know Humberto was drafted to Main Event. So that is where Humberto will stay. Murphy is going to SmackDown. Back on the same brand with Rollins and the Mysterio family. So again, this whole thing can just continue on. The only thing that changes now is the day of week. We are getting awfully close to Baby Day for Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch. She is due in December, which means that Seth is probably going to be off TV for a little while in the not too distant future. So I think it would be huge for him to put over Murphy on his way out. If Seth is going to be gone for a month, or he's going to be gone for 6 weeks or 8 weeks or whatever it might be, for him to put over Murphy at the end of all this and try to elevate Murphy to that next level, that would be a nice outcome, I think, to all of this. I'd like to see them do that. Drew Gulak goes to Monday Night Raw. Kalisto goes to SmackDown. As I thought would happen, they have split Kalisto away from the Lucha House Party, and there it is, yet another team, another faction, split up. Or at least possibly split up by WWE. I think the other members of the Lucha House Party, well, I'm not sure if they were considered a separate entity. They probably weren't. So they may have already been eligible to be drafted, so I'm going to assume they're staying on SmackDown. Or going to Raw, I should say, because Kalisto's on SmackDown. So I'm not 100% that the Lucha House Party is not going to end up on the same brand, but they probably should. If they're going to give Kalisto a little singles push or something, that's great, but what does it even matter? We all know how this is going to end up. Even if they split away Lince Dorado on his own, or they split up Kalisto on his own, they're going to end up on 205 Live. Nothing is going to change. The scenery might change. They might bounce to a different show, but nothing is going to change. Tucker. Staying on the subject of breaking up tag teams, we come to Tucker of Heavy Machinery. Tucker got the bad news when he and Otis were on Talking Smack that Tucker is moving to Monday Night Raw. Otis is staying on SmackDown. Tucker is going to Raw. Otis has now lost Tucker and Mandy Rose. He has lost his tag team partner and best friend and his girlfriend. I mean, I guess they're still boyfriend, girlfriend, but in terms of being on the same brand, he's lost all of the people that are special to him. He's now all alone. And WWE has broken up one of the few remaining teams that they had left. Now, here's my prediction. I don't think this is going to last for long. My prediction is that when Otis's case, the stupid case, which was given a continuance on TV this week, he was supposed to be litigating some kind of case with Miz and Morrison for the Money in the Bank. This is all nonsense. But they granted a continuance because they probably haven't figured out what the fuck they want to do yet. But my prediction is that when Otis's case goes to trial with Miz and Morrison, he is going to be forced to surrender his Money in the Bank briefcase in exchange for being traded to Monday Night Raw so that he can be reunited with his peach and he can be reunited with Mandy Rose as well. Or do I have that in reverse? I guess Tucker is not his peach. He could be reunited with his partner and with his girlfriend. I still think Otis and Tucker end up back together. There's no reason to break them up. There is no reason to break up Heavy Machinery. I know Vince McMahon supposedly likes Otis. I don't see there being much in the way of a big singles push in Otis's future. I don't see it. There's no reason yet. It's too soon to be breaking up this team. You barely have any teams as it is. They are more valuable together than they are apart. And I like Otis. I like Tucker too. I don't think Tucker gets enough credit in this team. Splitting them up would be a terrible idea. And I think, once this Money in the Bank stuff is resolved, they'll end up back together. And this Money in the Bank situation is a complete embarrassment. The fact that they clearly had no plan for what to do with that briefcase, the mentality of shoot now, ask questions later, it doesn't work. It has come back to bite them on the ass. They have absolutely no idea what to do with that briefcase. It is very clear that they're just trying to figure out a way to get it away from Otis. And what they've done is they've essentially turned the Money in the Bank concept, at least for this year, into a joke, like the 24/7 title. So that means that the free agents, free to sign anywhere they wish, the people who went undrafted, the last kids in line who didn't get picked for dodgeball, the losers are Mickie James, who is out for a few weeks with a broken nose, Gran Metalik, Lindsay Dorado. I guess I just answered my own question from before. Gran Metalik and Lindsay Dorado, they went undrafted, so technically they can sign with whoever has interest in them. And Chad Gable. I say send Mickie to SmackDown. Keep Metalik and Dorado on SmackDown because, again, whether you split them up or not, it's not going to matter. They probably should just stay where they are. And send Chad Gable to AEW. Can we do that? Can we draft him over to AEW? Is that possible? An absolute joke of a company that they see no value in Gable other than just doing 2-minute jobs and squashes for other people. I hope he gets drafted right out of this fucking company. As soon as he's free and clear. I hope he just runs as fast as his feet can carry him and gets the hell out of this company. Now, eligible to be drafted from tomorrow night's pool. We've got a long list here. This is the one remaining night of the draft. Here is the pool for Raw tomorrow night. Andrade. I'm guessing Andrade goes wherever Charlotte Flair goes. I think he could use some fresh scenery on SmackDown, but I really wish they would put him and Zelina Vega back together. Taking his mouthpiece away from him was a big mistake. I think Angel Garza without Zelina is okay. And he can, in terms of promos, he does a better job with the promos. I don't think he necessarily needs a Zelina Vega, but Andrade, I think it just is, it's so much of a stronger act if you just keep the two of them together. And I think it was a big mistake to split them apart. You could put them back together. I would put them back together. Bayley. I believe Bayley is Raw bound. I think Bayley's going to Monday Night Raw. And maybe that does give away the finish at Hell in a Cell. But Bayley has beaten everybody there is to beat on Friday nights. Even if you put a couple of new faces in the women's division on that show, she has been a staple on SmackDown now for a long time. She has held that SmackDown Women's Championship, in fact, for exactly 1 full year. It was October 11th of 2019 that she regained the SmackDown Women's title from Charlotte Flair. As of today, 365 days later, she is 1 year as the SmackDown Women's Champion. And if you take away the 1 week that Charlotte beat her for the belt, that one little hiccup, that number expands to over 500 days. If you count all the days from the run that came before Charlotte beat her for the belt, over 500 days she has spent as the SmackDown Women's Champion. I really wish they would have tried to hold off and do the title change next year at WrestleMania if they would have been able to find a way to do that. Have Sasha win the Women's Royal Rumble match. I don't see that happening now. I think Sasha will take the title at Hell in a Cell, and I think Bayley moves on. There is nothing left for her to do on SmackDown. And at least for a little while, I think they might want to put some distance between Sasha and Bayley. Aleister Black. I think you could build Aleister Black for a pay-per-view match with Drew McIntyre. I think you can build him up as an opponent for Drew McIntyre in the WWE Championship. It'll take a little bit of work. You know, he doesn't feel like a contender right now, but I think you can get there with him. And frankly, I think that could be a pretty damn good match, too. Drew McIntyre against Aleister Black. So I would keep him on Raw. Daniel Bryan is a name that has not been mentioned much recently. He's still on paternity leave. He could be back. Who knows? He could be back any week. But he is in the pool. I think Bryan should stay on SmackDown. I think there's the potential for rematches with Sami Zayn, matches with Big E, matches with Matt Riddle, and yes, matches with Roman Reigns. And boy, is there a history there that they could play off of. That could even be the WrestleMania match. Roman Reigns has a few different options. If he's still the champion come WrestleMania 37, I don't think the match with The Rock is going to happen. I guess you could put that on there as a possibility. I don't see that. You've got The Rock, though, as a possibility. You've got Big E. They want to build Big E up to that point. Big E against the Tribal Chief. And I think Daniel Bryan as well has to be on that list of consideration too, just given the history between these two. And the history that Roman can kind of play off of and all the shit that he had to go through all those years ago. You know, it's all Bryan's fault. And now look at me and look at you. And Bryan is always a great underdog babyface. And he's been gone long enough where I think, you know, it would kind of... I think that is a match that people could get behind. I'm not saying that should be the WrestleMania match next year. Bryan has been there. Bryan's already had his shot. If they want to give it to somebody else, I'm okay with that. I just look at these rosters and I like some of the matchups for him on SmackDown. It's not as if he has horrible matchups on Raw. You know, if you wanted to have Daniel Bryan against Aleister Black, Daniel Bryan against Drew McIntyre, Daniel Bryan and Keith Lee. You know, if Keith Lee was to stay on Monday nights. There's a lot of people, I think, that he really has not worked with on both brands. That could be a lot of fun. I would probably keep him on SmackDown. Carmella is eligible. King Corbin, who needs to ditch that gimmick. I mean, my God, it's been over a year of this King nonsense with the crown and the scepter. Enough already. Enough. Are they even doing another King? I guess they're not. I guess they're not doing King of the Ring. They do King of the Ring when it's convenient for them to do King of the Ring. Maybe we'll get one next year. Apollo Crews. All I'm going to say about this is get him the fuck away from the Hurt Business. I don't care where you put him. Hurt Business is on Raw. Put him on SmackDown. You could put him on NXT. You could put him somewhere else. Put him in Ohio Valley Wrestling. I don't give a shit. Just get him away from MVP and the Hurt Business. For the love of God, please. Put him somewhere else. Nikki Cross is eligible. Dabba-Kato. Hey, look, it's Yabba Dabba Doo guy. He is eligible in the draft. Dolph Ziggler and Bobby Roode. Eric of the Viking Raiders. Eric of the Viking Raiders, he just had surgery to remove a surgical screw in his arm that was poking into the triceps in his, as he calls it, cyborg arm. I believe that this is some of the hardware that was installed after that motorcycle wreck 6 years ago that almost killed him. I mean, by all accounts, he should have died in that accident. Even the doctor said, the fact that you're alive right now is beyond comprehension. That's how awful that accident was that he was in. I remember that too, because he, War Machine was, they were a big act at the time in Ring of Honor when he had that wreck. And so Ivar Hansen, he got a nice little singles push for himself. I remember being at a couple of those shows, and God, it was one of the shows at Terminal 5 in New York, because they didn't want to pay the rent or whatever it was, the fee to rent out the Manhattan Center, the Hammerstein. So they went to Terminal 5, which is some dance club, or it was. For all I know, it could be shut down now with everything going on. But I remember there was some kind of fatal four-way match that he was part of, and I remember being really impressed. So he was getting a nice singles push while Eric was on the shelf for a while there. Look, I hate to say it, but without Ivar's out right now with a neck injury. Without Ivar, Eric is doomed. I just don't see them doing anything with him. This was the right time for him to take some time off and have surgery. You may as well. Right? I mean, God, you may as well. Luke Harper did the same thing, I think, when Eric Rowan went down with an injury. He had some kind of nagging injury he had to have taken care of. I think he went off and had surgery for something. It's the perfect time for it, but frankly, even if he comes back in 3 months, 6 months, Ivar's still out, do you really think they're going to do anything with Eric? No. They're not going to do anything with Eric. Doesn't matter what brand he gets drafted to, they're not going to do anything with Eric. Lacey Evans is eligible tomorrow night. Charlotte Flair, who I would draft to SmackDown. I think her and Bianca could have some good matches together. Jeff Hardy is eligible. Billie Kay. Lana. I think Lana would prefer to be drafted to a show that has no announce table at ringside. Keith Lee. I think Keith Lee stays on Monday Night Raw. Riddick Moss. We've seen Riddick Moss pop up on Raw Underground. Riddick Moss had no idea that he has been wrestling for the past 2 months with a torn ACL. He announced this on his Instagram. So he didn't say he had surgery, I have to assume. He had surgery to fix the issue. So if that's the case, he's going to be gone for a while. It depends if it was a partial tear or full tear. He didn't give any details. He'll be gone for at least a few months, I would imagine. If he knew that he was hurt and he worked through it anyway, then he's a moron. I mean, if it was a partial tear, he could have a full tear now. It's like, dude, maybe he just thought it was something minor. That doesn't feel like a big deal. It doesn't hurt all that much. All right, well, then maybe that's different. But when like, oh shit, something's wrong with my knee, something's wrong with my leg, you got to get that checked out. Guy's wrestling for 2 months with a torn ACL. You mean to tell me he didn't feel any pain? He had no symptoms. He had no lingering issues from that. He seems to take pride in the fact that he wrestled for 2 months without even knowing he had a torn ACL. I don't know if that's bravery or just stupidity. It's not smart either way, because now he's gone. And who knows when he's going to be back. R-Truth, Natalya, Titus O'Neil, Randy Orton, Bray Wyatt. I think they're going to move Bray Wyatt. And WrestleVotes seems to, they kind of already said he's probably moving. I would think they would move Bray Wyatt just to get the Fiend away from Roman Reigns. So I think we have probably seen the last of the Fiend on SmackDown. And that begs the question, what happens with Alexa Bliss? Alexa Bliss is very much part of this whole Fiend act now. This story is not yet done playing itself out. If the Fiend is moved to Monday nights, then Alexa has to come with him. Kevin Owens. I would send Kevin Owens to SmackDown. And SmackDown is where Kevin Owens wants to be. He did an interview with Bleacher Report. He said that he thinks a move to SmackDown would be a change for him that would be good. He thinks it would be a chance at a fresh start. This is what he said. I don't know what it is about me. I feel like I give it my all. I deliver every time I'm on the air, but for some reason, I feel like I always end up in a situation where I could always use a fresh start after a little while. I always try my best to do that, so it always helps to get a new platform. Here I am again, 1 year later, and last year, I was so desperate to move to Raw, and I got moved to Raw. Now I'm pretty desperate to move to SmackDown because for some reason, I don't feel like things are working out for me on Raw. Maybe I'll be better on SmackDown, but at the same time last year, I didn't think things were working out for me on SmackDown, And I thought Raw maybe was the place. And he said that he was very upset. It bothered him that he got drafted so low. Owens went in the 3rd round in 2019. I do think that Kevin Owens is sort of underappreciated for what he can bring to the table, and I can understand why he would be frustrated. I don't know that things are going to be all that different for him this time around, but I think moving to SmackDown is the right move. Retribution. I'm going to be talking about Retribution here in a little bit. I think they stay together on Raw as an act. I don't think they're going anywhere. Matt Riddle. This is an interesting one. Matt Riddle has been sued by the woman who accused him of rape when he was still working for Evolve. This was an incident that allegedly happened, I think it was 3 years ago. Is it two or 3 years ago? I believe is when this is alleged to have taken place. WWE doesn't seem too concerned by this because he was on TV Friday night, and at least so far, there doesn't seem to be any kind of blowback or, hey, let's take him off TV for a while. This could get kind of messy. Everything seems to be kind of all hunky-dory where it comes to Matt Riddle on TV. But this is going to be a cloud that is hanging over his head for a long time. Now, this woman is also suing WWE. She is suing Evolve, and she is suing Gabe Sapolsky. All 4 of them she is suing for $10 million each. So that's a $40 million lawsuit that she has filed against all of these parties. I'm not sure how that works, given that WWE now owns Evolve. Evolve no longer stands as its own separate entity. Gabe Sapolsky works now for WWE. Riddle, Riddle's a weird one, because I've talked up Matt Riddle in the past. Even before, I couldn't understand why WWE wouldn't sign him. They clearly did not want Matt Riddle going anywhere else. They did not want Matt Riddle to go to AEW. They wanted Matt Riddle in Evolve. And I think it was kind of like Triple H telling Gabe at the time, hey, take this guy. We're not ready for him yet, but we think he could be something. So you take him, because they had the working relationship with Evolve. So clearly there was always an interest there, even if it was just to keep him away from other companies. And then it just got to the point when AEW was starting to bubble up. That's when they signed Riddle, right? Now it predates the birth of AEW by a little bit, but I think WWE could see that things were starting to happen. And all of a sudden, I think it was in 2018, Riddle gets signed. And he's very good. He's very good. I remember seeing a lot of his independent matches and was very impressed. And I thought to myself, you just look at this guy. This guy has star written all over him. He could be the greatest babyface in the world. I've heard the comparisons made to the Von Erichs, not just because of the bare feet, but he could be that kind of babyface. And I still think that the potential is there for that. I think he is very talented. But boy, there's been a lot of stories that have come out. There seems to be a lot of people in the wrestling business, a lot of talent that has a lot of heat with Matt Riddle, or Riddle has heat with a lot of different people, including Seth Rollins, which I found to be very interesting. Seth Rollins got drafted this week to Smackdown. So after Rollins got drafted to Smackdown, he was back doing an interview with some of the hosts, the guys that host that WWE show, The Bump. It was kind of like a watch-along they were doing. And so now Rollins is in the hot seat being interviewed about what it's like to be moved. You're going from Raw to SmackDown. And they're asking him all kinds of questions. And the name Matt Riddle is brought up. And Rollins' exact words were, I've got no interest in facing Matt Riddle at any point in my career, so he could go to Raw as far as I'm concerned. And that was it. And he sounded 100% serious when he said this. Now, from what I can gather, because I thought there's got to be a reason for this. Maybe there's something that happened. From what I can gather, this stems at least in part, this may not be all of it, but it stems at least in part from Riddle's wife, Lisa, body shaming Becky Lynch last year on Instagram. And by the way, I get that Riddle's wife is a personal trainer. She's like a bodybuilder, I think, and a personal trainer. Takes fitness very seriously, but who the hell body shames Becky Lynch? And Becky Lynch was not the only woman on the roster that apparently she was body shaming and talking crap about on social media. But there was a picture. Because even though she deleted the post, the internet never forgets. People took screenshots, and in the screenshot, she had a picture of Becky Lynch's backside. Becky Lynch is standing in the ring, and it's just a picture of her ass. And she writes this long post talking about, like, these women, you got to start squatting. And I'm like, who the hell? Like, really? You're going to body shame Becky Lynch? I mean, not that it would make her any more likable if she was body shaming somebody else, but even I thought, like, wow, that's a weird thing to be doing. That's a very weird thing to be doing. So I'm guessing between that and just the reputation that Riddle seems to have, Seth really does not like Matt Riddle, and he does not want to work with him. The list of people who don't like Matt Riddle and don't want to work with him seems to be getting longer. Brock Lesnar literally told Matt Riddle, I will never work a match with you. Goldberg wants nothing to do with him because he's been talking crap about Goldberg for years. Now Seth Rollins. Don't forget Tommaso Ciampa. I don't know that Ciampa's ever said that he wouldn't work with Riddle, but remember that video that Riddle put out on Twitter last year? It was like this 20-second video, quick video he posted to Twitter, just looking in the camera. I guess what happened is he was calling out the other people on the NXT roster. He was calling them garbage for not giving him a ride. Their calls were all, their cars, I guess they were going to the next town or whatever. I guess their cars were all just conveniently full, and they refused to give Matt Riddle a ride. So he called them all hags, and he called them all pieces of trash. And Tommaso Ciampa, he tweeted back, and he said, the boys will police themselves. Go fuck yourself. That was his message for Matt Riddle. And look, it's not, we can look back on it a year later. It's not like it was some kind of angle that led to a match. I don't even think Ciampa was back on TV yet. I think he had just made his return a few weeks after that. But yeah, he had the very curt reply to Matt Riddle, telling him to go fuck himself. So it just seems to me like there's a lot of people. And from what I understand, those are not the only names. There are quite a few people who are not very fond of Matt Riddle. And at some point you start to wonder if it's the people that are the problem, or is it the person? Right? Because you don't have to get along with everybody. You don't have to get along with all of your coworkers. But it's one thing to not be, to have some kind of beef with 1-2 people. When there's multiple stories about this, you start to wonder, who is the real problem in this scenario? Why is it that all these people seem to have an issue with this one guy, right? What's going on here? The Riot Squad is eligible tomorrow night. Ruby Riott and Liv Morgan. Peyton Royce, Arturo Huas. Sami Zayn is eligible. Sami Zayn is the Intercontinental Champion. We know Bobby Lashley is the United States Champion. The Hurt Business is staying on Raw. I don't see Sami coming to Raw with the IC title. I think he stays right where he is, which means that we may soon see him and Kevin Owens. If Kevin Owens moves over to SmackDown, we may soon see the two of them mixing it up yet again in the ring. I think enough time has probably gone by where I'd be okay to see it. I just got so sick of it after a while. They needed to keep these guys apart for a while, and they have. But they always just seem to find their way back to each other. It's like they said all those years ago, we're destined to do this forever. I think that's true. I actually believe that to be true. They always seem to find their way back to each other. Sheamus. Sheamus has feuded with Jeff Hardy. He has feuded with Big E. He has lost both of those feuds. And his good buddy, his good friend, Drew McIntyre, happens to be the WWE Champion on Monday Night Raw. I'm thinking Sheamus is going to Monday Night Raw. I think he would be someone they can plug in there for at least one pay-per-view match with McIntyre, somebody for McIntyre to beat. Shinsuke Nakamura and Cesaro are eligible tomorrow night, as are the Street Profits, who I believe are going to move to SmackDown. Braun Strowman, Tamina, Akira Tozawa, and Zelina Vega. I think where Andrade goes, so should Zelina Vega. But I expect her to stay on Raw. If that's where Aleister Black stays, then she'll probably stay on Monday Night Raw. So that is where we are with the draft. Those are the moves I would make. I think it's a mistake. I have to say this. I think it is a mistake to not include NXT in these things, even if just for appearance purposes, even if a lot of people don't really go back and forth to the NXT brand, to not even have them as part of this draft process. Like, once the show was moved to USA Network, there was no longer any excuse to not treat NXT like the third brand they keep telling us that it is. It's almost like they treat it like a third-rate brand. Oh, it's not developmental, Triple H says. It's our third brand. They sure don't treat it like one. You know, NXT was included in last year's Survivor Series. The NXT stars were all over Raw and SmackDown for weeks leading up to Survivor Series. And then they went to Survivor Series and they won. NXT won. Please justify to me why they shouldn't be included in this draft. If they were, I would have probably sent Johnny Gargano and Candice LeRae to SmackDown. I would like to see Rhea Ripley on SmackDown, but with Io Shirai and Toni Storm and now Ember Moon in that NXT women's division, I think she can stick around there for a little while longer. They have refreshed the women's division down in NXT. And it's not just a one-way street. You know, NXT could have used a few pickups too. Chad Gable, yes, I want to see Chad Gable leave and go somewhere else, but if the guy can't go anywhere for a while, if he's locked up for a while, I would send him back to NXT and see if he can get things back on track. Ditch the fucking name, ditch the fucking gear, and try to get his career back on track. I do think that he brings value. Whenever I defend Chad Gable, there's always a few morons who I don't even think really listen to the show, but they'll hear clips and they'll be like, oh, all he does is you defend Chad Gable. The guy's a jobber. What do you see in Chad Gable? He's tiny. He's a vanilla midget. If you can't see the fact that Chad Gable brings value or could bring value to the show, then you never saw his run in NXT. But just go back and watch the King of the Ring last year. He and Baron Corbin had a great King of the Ring last year. And Chad Gable was the great underdog babyface story of the entire tournament. He had people who probably didn't even know who he was in some cases. When he would come out, sometimes it would be crickets. By the end of the match, they would be behind this guy. They were rooting for him. They wanted to see him succeed and win and do well. He has that innate ability to get people behind him. He is very strong for a guy who is on the smaller side. So when you watch him, roll up somebody and throw him in the air like a Baron Corbin, who is a big guy, and throw him in the air with a chaos theory or something, he can pop you with those big moves. He's got the Olympic background. He's very good in the ring. If you don't think this guy doesn't bring value, then you've got cataracts in your eyes. You don't hear me sitting here saying, put Chad Gable in the WrestleMania main event. Put the Universal title on Chad Gable. That's not what I'm saying. Okay? Pay attention to what I'm saying. Don't hear what you want to hear. Pay attention to what I'm actually saying. He can bring value to the product, and it doesn't seem like they agree. Yeah, they gave him a job. They have him under contract, but so what? They sign people for the hell of it. They sign people to keep them away from other companies and from going somewhere else. The real indication that they see value in you is what they are doing with you, if anything, on TV. Clearly, they see no value in this man. And I think that is a flawed opinion. That is fucking stupid. Yes, he brings value. I'd like to see them do something with him, and maybe going back to NXT for a while is exactly what he needs to get back on track. And that would be good enough, right? Finn Balor, they still have Finn Balor. They just got Ember Moon back. That's all you would need to do. You don't need a lot of NXT moves back and forth, but you gotta make them part of the draft. Now, I got an email from Tracy in Brooklyn, and he touched on something that I agree with, and I had wanted to talk about this, and I'm glad he sent the email. And I've talked about this in years past when it comes to the timing of these drafts. Doing a draft in October does not make any sense. It's not even a sweeps period for TV networks. I think that's in November. I think again in February and May. That's usually when sweeps are. That's a very important period for the networks. We're not even in sweeps period yet. So I don't want to hear, well, they do it in October for the ratings. Well, yeah, they do it for the ratings, but you could do it in some other month for the ratings. Doing it in October does not make any sense. The biggest reason is that you are right in the middle of certain feuds. It's one of these times of year where you're right in the middle of a lot of these different feuds and storylines, and sometimes that can be a good thing, right? Sometimes these storylines and these programs are not very good, and you're looking for a reason to just terminate them and move on. So that could be a good thing sometimes. But now you're interrupting these storylines because one person was drafted to another show. A month later, you have Survivor Series. Next month is Survivor Series, which they will bill as this great battle for brand supremacy, Raw versus SmackDown. It's a battle between the red shirts and the blue shirts. Well, if I'm somebody who spent 2 years on Monday Night Raw, and then I get drafted to SmackDown 4 weeks later, I mean, how loyal can I really be to the blue brand, right? But I've argued that something has to be on the line. That's always been my biggest gripe with this. Something has to be on the line if you're going to do this. And this, by the way, this is just a separate point. This has nothing to do with the timing of the draft, but I wanted to bring this up as well. Since I mentioned Survivor Series and the whole brand supremacy thing, it's always bragging rights. Why do I give a shit? I'm not on Raw. I'm not on SmackDown. I watch both shows every week. I have no loyalty to one brand over the other. I don't give a shit. Something should be on the line, more than just brand supremacy and bragging rights. They used to have a pay-per-view called Bragging Rights. You know why they don't have a pay-per-view called Bragging Rights anymore? Because nobody bought the fucking show. If it was a concept that worked, they would still be doing bragging rights every single year. Nobody cares about that. There needs to be something at stake. Something tangible has to be on the line. There have to be real stakes at Survivor Series in order to get people to really care about who wins. And Tracy pitched an idea that I've also pitched in the past. What if you did the draft right after Survivor Series? And the winning brand earned bonus picks in the draft. Or even better, the winning brand earned the number 1 pick in the draft. You could exclude the top 2 champions if you want to, because, if you included NXT, for example, I don't think anybody believes that Roman Reigns is going to NXT. If I'm Triple H, I would want to draft Roman Reigns to NXT. So let's say you exclude the 2 top champions, right? You could do that if you want to. But at least if you do it this way, then there's something tangible on the line. Now, the other time that would make the most sense to do the draft is when they used to do it, which is right after WrestleMania. WrestleMania has, not always, but traditionally been the place where feuds reach their climax. It sort of represents the end of the WWE season, and Raw the next night represents the start of the new season. That's the perfect time to hold a draft when you have a whole bunch of stories that have already wrapped up, and now you can refresh the rosters and start a whole bunch of new stories that take you through the rest of the year. So those are my thoughts on the draft, the timing of the draft, and all the eligible picks in the pool tomorrow night. We will see how it shakes out on Raw. Do I see a radical shift in these shows coming out of the draft? Not a radical shift. It never really feels like things change all that much. But, sometimes if you have a couple of big moves, that could kind of freshen things up for at least a few weeks. But they're going to have to address some of these questions that I mentioned, and the stuff about the Big E thing. Again, it's just very puzzling to me why Raw would pick 2 members of the New Day and not all 3. And I'm not going to hold my breath, but I'm hoping that they'll have some kind of explanation for it on TV this week. I was going to say, maybe we come to find out that Big E actually put in a request for it, but that's not how he's been behaving, like a family member died. So unless he's swerving everybody, I don't think it's going to be that. I don't know that we're going to get any explanation. But again, all the people who are pitchforks and torches coming after WWE for splitting up the New Day, I think you need to take a step back and think about this a little bit harder. This is a good move. This is a positive move. And the worst thing that happens is the Big E singles push. It doesn't go as far as some people think it's going to go. And the New Day ends up right back together where they were before. It is a win-win situation. I like the move. There is nothing really new to report on the WWE Twitch cameo situation outside of one report that talent is said to be very mad, as you would expect them to be about the whole situation. Paige did raise some eyebrows this past week when she tweeted a very vague statement saying that she learned a lot about unions today. I'm sure she's not the only one, but there's a difference between reading about it and actually doing anything. And to this point, nobody has done anything. Nobody has stood up and said anything about this publicly or even behind the scenes, at least not as far as some of the sites have reported. They may be very upset and very angry about this, but nobody is actually standing up and doing anything so far. But I bring this up because in light of this, I found this next item to be so rich. So rich and so creamy and so sweet that it almost gave me a cavity. At the same time, the WWE was taking control last week of the Twitch and the Cameo accounts for its talent, Forbes magazine published its list of the world's most influential chief marketing officers, and guess who ranked number 2 on the list, right below the senior vice president of worldwide marketing for Apple? Stephanie McMahon came in at number 2 on the list, and hey, that's a great position for her to be in, right under the guy from Apple. But get a load of the description that accompanied her entry on this list. This was the write-up. McMahon is an outspoken and highly visible executive at WWE, a company in an industry often mired in controversy. The daughter of WWE CEO Vince McMahon, she is a former WWE superstar herself, and she is a big proponent of WWE superstars growing their own brands via social media. I'll bet she is. They're a big proponent of growing your own brands on social media so that they can take them over. Hey, I'd be a big proponent of that too. You do all the work, and then I get to take over. Of all the weeks for that list to be published, I don't think I can make this shit up if I tried.